Thank you so much. I am really honored by this award. Renata, you have your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Oh, my apologies. I was just congratulating you. It's a clapping.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. So I'm trying. Oh, yeah. So can you see the full screen of the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Ísold, and I was a student at the University of Akureyri last year when I finished a BS degree in biotechnology. And I'm here to talk about the thesis that I wrote. And the name of the thesis is Redirecting Phosphorus from Wastewater. And yeah, it was a collaboration between Háskólinn á Akureyri and St. Mary's College of Maryland, because I had one of my advisors is from there. So to give you a brief overview, the idea for my thesis started from my interest in phosphorus as a fertilizer. It's a really important element and plant nutrient, and it's a limited resource. So if we run out of phosphorus, that's really that can have a really serious consequence. And phosphorus is, amongst other ways, lost to sea through sewage. And we have wastewater treatment plants around the world, but it's around half of wastewater that is treated. And in Iceland, we don't really do it. But in the treatment, the phosphorus is taken up. So yeah, in Iceland, we just let all the phosphorus go out to the sea. For example, in Eyjafjörður, where clams live. They are bivalves that are, yeah, it's a sea animal. And my advisors had taken some microorganism specimens from the gut of these clams, and I wanted to see if they could take up phosphorus, because they have been exposed to phosphorus in the sea for some time. And then the future idea would be to develop a sewage system that is good for Icelandic conditions. And yes, my advisors were Eva Maria Ingvadóttir, and she is adjunct at the University of Akureyri. And then Christina Geithel, which is a teacher at the St. Mary's College of Maryland. So phosphorus is an essential element for life. We mine it from phosphorus mines in the earth, and then we make fertilizer from this and yeah, grow crops. And yeah, the reason that phosphorus is important is amongst others, it's an important part of the molecule ATP, which is the energy molecule that most cells use. And then it's also a building block of DNA backbone. And it's also an important part of the cell membrane. And here we have the natural cycle of phosphorus. So the cycle takes hundreds of millions of years, and it starts with the weathering of phosphorus rocks from the ground, and this is where we mine the phosphorus from. But naturally, it gives just a steady input of available phosphorus for plants through erosion and weathering. And then when the phosphorus has entered the terrestrial ecosystems, it goes around there, goes up to the plants, and animals eat them. Then it goes back to the soil when the animals die. And eventually a runoff causes the phosphorus to go to the sea. And there it enters the sea ecosystems, and in the end, it forms sediment on the seafloor. And from there, it takes a form of phosphate rock, and then it just takes, yeah, like I said, hundreds of millions of years to go back into the mountains, or yeah, where it can be delivered back into the ecosystems. So this is a limited resource, and we use a lot of phosphorus fertilizer. In 2015, we used 21 million tons of phosphorus in fertilizers. And the distribution of mines is, yeah, it's almost completely in Morocco. So 72% of the mines are in Morocco, and then it's distributed between some other countries as well. But this can create political conflicts, and it's really bad that one country can control the price of such an important element. And yeah, because it's a limited resource, the estimations have been done to decide when it's going to be depleted, and that is in a few decades or centuries. So we don't really have a lot of time left. And when the mines will be depleted, we could face famine. So we really have to think about what we want to do and find some ways to stop wasting it into the sea. And yes, we can see on the graph there, in 2007 or 8, we had this financial crisis, and then there was a 400% increase in the price. So this is a really unstable market, and yeah, it's pretty hard. And yeah, so humans have disrupted this natural cycle of phosphorus, and we have it's like 2 or 3 times faster input into the terrestrial ecosystems than before humans. And yeah, so we lose phosphorus through runoff of agricultural land and food waste, and through sewage, which is my main part that I'm looking at here. And yeah, 3 million tons of phosphorus are lost into the sea through sewage each year. So this is something we want to improve. And yeah, the too much phosphorus can cause eutrophication and fish death and water impurities in water. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So as I mentioned before, half of wastewater in the world around that is treated. And this is what the process normally looks like. So the preliminary treatment is only to take out big stuff and sand and stuff like that, and it is just taken to landfill. And then in the primary treatment, the sewage is put into a tank where it can sediment, where sedimentation can happen. So on the bottom of the tank is like stuff that goes to the bottom, and then that is taken to a digester, sludge digester, as you can see on the bottom of the image. And in the secondary treatment is the microbial treatment. So in the aeration tank, we have microbes that degrade organic compounds, and this is where phosphorus is removed, or the bulk of the phosphorus is removed there. And then we go on to tertiary treatment, which is just disinfection. So my main focus is on the P removal, and the PAO, like you see on the slide, that stands for phosphate accumulating organisms. And these organisms or microorganisms are really good at taking up phosphorus compared to other organisms. So they are utilized in this process. And then we have the treatment in Iceland. This is the case in most places. So we only have this preliminary treatment, and then we just let everything flow into the sea. And the reason for this is there are a few reasons. Firstly, so the law is that secondary treatment is required in Iceland, but most of the receiving waters are considered less sensitive, and then maybe it's not needed. So preliminary treatment might be enough for most wastewater treatment plants. And this is the case in Akureyri or Eyjafjörður. And then we also have a really diluted sewage. So we use a lot of water in Iceland to heat our homes, and we do that with hot water in most places. And we also have a single pipe drainage system. So everything, the sewage and from the heating systems and everything goes into the same pipe, which makes it hard for microorganisms to take up phosphorus and other nutrients because they are so rare in the water. And we also have a cold climate, which can slow down breakdown by these microorganisms. So that is why I wanted to look into if we can find some organisms from Iceland to do this. And it's also expensive, and we don't really have good systems in Iceland, and it's expensive to build up a whole new pipe drainage system, for example. But yeah, as you can see in the picture, 83% of Iceland only has preliminary treatment, and 14% even has no treatment. And yes, I made an estimate that around 26,000 kilos of phosphorus are released into Eyjafjörður. So that is only from Akureyri. So there's a lot of phosphorus that we could be using that we just throw into the sea. And I wanted to mention this so you can understand what I'm going to say next. So phosphate accumulating organism, they produce bioplastic, which is also called PHA, polyhydroxy alkanoates. And they do this they produce this as a byproduct when they take a phosphate. So this is where this is what I screened for. So we had a strain collection, and I screened all of them for if they can produce PHA. And from there, I tried to deduce if they could take up phosphate. So my research questions were two. First one is, can promising PHA producing clams, that is just the microorganism, that's the strain collection, remove phosphates from synthetic wastewater under aerobic conditions? And the second question is there a correlation between PHA production and phosphate removal in these strains? And this is the process of the project. So my advisors already had isolated strains from the clam gut. And then, as I told you, I did this this assay, this screening of if they could produce PHA with soot and black staining. And then from there, I worked with those strains to see if they could produce, if they could accumulate phosphates. And I also did some extra characterization and sequencing. So I started with 74 strains and only 31 of them reactivated from the freezer. 7 stained with the soot and black staining. So 7 of them could possibly make PHA and therefore take up phosphate. And we selected 5 for further study. And in the picture, you can just see how the color accumulates on the bioplastic in the cells. And then we made synthetic wastewater. We made 2 types. One was nutrient poor and one was nutrient rich. The nutrient poor was really similar to the sewage effluent of the plant in Akureyri. The nutrient rich was more similar to effluent in other countries. And we had 2 variables, and that was phosphate. So we had different different strength or different amounts of phosphates, and also different amounts of acetate, which served as a carbon. And we also calculated the CP ratios from this, which can be important for the growth and survival of microorganisms. And then to measure if they could take up phosphate, we did molybdenum blue methods. We used molybdenum blue method, and to measure if they could, to be sure that they could produce PHA, we used soot and black staining. And my main findings on phosphate uptake were that most strains could take up at least some amount of phosphate. And in the nutrient poor synthetic wastewater, the strains were taking up to 35% of the initial phosphates in the sewage. And these results compare positively to conventional uptake. So it was slightly higher than what has been seen normally, but so it's really interesting and exciting. And also in the nutrient-rich synthetic wastewater, the uptake was up to 85%. So yes, I will show you the best strain, or the strain that took up the most. The light green, I don't remember the English word, but you see the light green, these lines here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but they stand for initial phosphate amounts, and then the dark green lines stand for how much was taken up. So we see that in P3, like you see down there in the scale, in P3, this strain took up 28 to 36% of the phosphate. And in the P2 conditions, it really didn't take up any phosphate. And this was the same for all of the strains. Most of them didn't take anything up in P2, and we don't really know why that happened. And this is the same strain in the nutrient-rich synthetic wastewater. And it took up to 85% in P1 conditions. And yeah, so this is really positive. These are positive results that we got. And yeah, so we could possibly use these strains to develop a sewage system in Iceland. And then for the bioplastic production, the strains were quite different between the nutrient poor and nutrient rich sewage, but they didn't really produce that much PHA compared to strains that are conventionally used to produce PHA. But we could confirm that most of them can produce PHA in different amounts depending on different conditions. So to answer my research questions, the strains could remove phosphate from synthetic wastewater, but there wasn't really a correlation between PHA production and phosphate removal because, yeah, as in when they could take so there wasn't a correlation between the amount of PHA produced and phosphate accumulated. And then I just wanted to talk a bit about what we can do. We need to improve wastewater treatment. And we could possibly use the microorganisms from the clams. Yeah, I forgot to mention their Latin name is Arctica Icelandica. And then we could use the biomass derived from the treatment as a fertilizer. And then we would close the phosphorus cycle again. But there's a legal framework around that has to change before this is possible, because it's fertilizer derived from human feces. So it's not allowed to use this, I think. From what I understand, it's not allowed. And we also just need to decrease food waste. And runoff from agricultural land is a big part of where phosphorus is lost. So maybe it would be possible to clean the water somehow from the agricultural land. And also what I think is really interesting is to mine phosphorus from the seafloor before it's lost into the Earth's crust. It would be possible to mine it using microorganisms. And there's a picture of how that would look like in the corner. But yes, I am finished. Do you have any questions?